Welcome back to Exploring the Edges. This week we have a big topic in mind, and I think the bigness is because of Gemini season. It's Gemini season. We just had a new moon in Gemini. We have a lot of Mercury energy in the field as well. Mercury's in Gemini. There's a Cazimi later this week. And so, because of this expansiveness, all mental activity, Gemini has many pots burning at the same time, all at the same time, and also with that energy wanting to really uncover what's at the bottom of each of the pots.
Hmm.
I'm a Gemini, so it is my season. My solar return is coming up, and all of the Geminis we know sort of share that same expansive mental
Yeah, it seems to be that way.
energy.
Yeah.
So, so we're going to talk a little bit about that, and but not in the way that we might think.
Yeah, and that's kind of the topic of the entire thing is that just it's not always in the way that you might think.
Hmm.
And maybe letting go of that a little bit to make space for the way that it should be.
Yeah.
That's in your best interest.
Yeah, so let's jump right in. So every time we sit down, come online, start recording, every time we press record, we're really entering a sacred space. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that every time we press record, we are grateful for the opportunity to share
Mm.
ourselves with you. And so if you're here listening, we just really appreciate that. If you're listening real time in Gemini season,
Yeah.
then you can feel into all of these energies.
Yeah.
But if you come across this another time, maybe this is just a good book to go on the shelf in terms of Gemini
Yeah,
energy.
maybe it will help prepare you for the next
Jen, are you
round.
saying that you need to be prepared to interact
Well,
with Gemini
I
people?
don't know if I'm prepared ever for anything.
So here it is. So when we think about Gemini, the way that I wanted to frame this conversation was around innovation.
Mm,
And I thought we were going to have this conversation around creating space to do things differently.
yeah.
But that is not where we're going to take this conversation.
Okay.
We're going to talk about innovation, but not in a way that is a product or produces results.
Mm.
We are going to talk about innovation in a way that does not produce results. And so I think we're going to start small and then work our way all the way up, which I often like to do
Yeah, I love a good build.
in these conversations.
Yeah, I love it.
All right, so we'll start at the beginning. And what I heard from Spirit when we were channeling, what I heard is that every time we do something differently, every time we step outside of our routine, we are opening the field. And so this looks like, I know we talk a lot of like cliche, like just take a left instead of a right on your
Yeah.
way home from work
Yeah.
and see where it goes, or, just take a shower at night or instead of the morning, or,
Yeah.
any of these really simple, and they're not really like mindset hacks. It's just that when we're in our routines,
Yeah.
we're on autopilot. And I know sometimes you'll say, like, how did I get home from, I drove home on autopilot, or,
Yeah, or like when you're walking the dog or going up for a walk and you take the same route, then you're like, I think it happens to everybody where you just kind of click and you're like, how did I get here even? Like I don't even remember.
yeah,
But if you take a different route, you have to pay attention because you have to kind of like track where you are, right? So it turns everything back on.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think every time we break from the routine,
Hmm.
and not in a way to have a better routine or a biohacking way, but just
Hmm.
every time we step outside of our routine, we're opening the field. We can look at it in this lens of the, taking a different way home, changing the route that you walk on, you know, booking a trip to a city you've never been to just for one night, right?
Yeah.
Things that we don't normally do as part of our normal routine.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes we can get locked into even the way that we see recreation, or we have the same hobbies, or when we go on vacation, every year we go to this spot,
Yeah.
like I think we can get kind of, and it's not stuck, it's comfort.
Yeah.
And so if we can start to adopt this mindset, and the mindset is every time I do something that's outside of how I would normally do it, outside of my routine, I'm opening up the field for creativity and
Hmm.
opportunity. And if we step out of the day-to-day life and into the spirituality, or I don't know even know if we can call it spirituality anymore. It's an experiential way of being.
Hmm.
And so if we come into this with this mindset that I'm open to experiencing the field.
Yeah.
And so what happens here is, let's say that we are writers and we are always sort of writing in this really deeply held emotional prose. Like what happens when we tell the story from the mouse's point of view? Like there's all of these ways, and sometimes it's in the breaking of the way that we have always done things.
Yeah.
And this is where innovation comes in.
Hmm.
Because I think even like, my own experience with like singing,
Yeah.
for example, like such a great example. So like when I was younger, I was not allowed to be part of the singing sensations in seventh grade.
Yes.
And maybe we've talked about this, but maybe we haven't. So I was not allowed to be part of the singing sensations. And that was really important to me. And so in my mind, I have this idea of what singing is, just because it's the way that I was raised. I was brought
Yeah.
up with
Well,
this idea.
somebody of authority told you that the sounds that you made were not singing, that were not good enough.
Yeah, it
And
was not right for singing sensations.
yeah, and it was somebody of authority. And I think that that's huge because maybe if like another kid would have said it, you'd be like, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But getting from this place of not really being quite cut out to be a singing sensation
Hmm.
to this place now where I'm like vocal toning and channeling light language, right? Like the space in between this is so far apart. And so I didn't step out of the mentality of singing sensations and into the reality of seeing the earth's frequency in light language in another language
Yeah.
in one step.
No, of course not. It's
No.
yeah.
Yeah. And so in each of these, like I had the thought, somewhere along the path, like maybe I'll just like look at chanting the sounds that go with the chakras.
Yeah.
And like that was a piece of it, That's sort of what turned on vocal toning.
Hmm.
And when that thought popped into my mind, like, I've never toned the sacred sounds that go with the chakras. So if I had dismissed it, that would have been an opportunity that was lost.
Hmm.
Oh, and not an innovation, but just an opportunity that was missed.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think that that like even comes with practicing presence,
Mm,
and I think that there's like this little, even if it's an in-between step where it's like changing your routine
hmm.
and having presence because again, like when you're just walking the same loop and you don't know how you got from point A to point B, it's a lack of presence, right? You're just kind of like zoned out
Yeah.
and shut off and like your body just takes you there. And I think that people's tolerance for discomfort are like very different. And some people are like really not okay with taking an 8 p.m. shower and moving it to the first thing in the morning or vice versa. Like it's too much.
Yeah.
But I think that there's small things that you can do that are even still a part of your routine to bridge that.
Hmm.
So like maybe when you're brushing your teeth, really easy to just zone out, right? While you're brushing your teeth, you've been doing it your whole life.
Yeah.
Maybe use your non-dominant hand when you brush your teeth. And
Mm,
then like even that, even though it's not necessarily feeling like it's opening you up to the field or anything spiritual, it's bringing presence to like a monotonous task, right?
yeah.
And I think without that lack of presence, like practicing presence, then you could have an idea like, oh, maybe try vocal toning these sounds.
Yeah.
Maybe you won't even hear it, or maybe it will just like instantly be gone, or you'll dismiss it.
Yeah.
But if you're constantly practicing presence,
Mm,
then it might help you to see like these little opportunities and recognize them a little bit more because you're not kind of just like floating in between most of the time. And I think a lot of people are.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
even we are
Yeah,
sometimes.
sure. Sometimes, yeah. And I think like there's just different levels of it. I
Hmm.
know that I float like a lot less than I used to,
Mm,
but also sometimes, I mean, this is a whole other conversation, but I feel like that's like often a coping mechanism. And maybe it does tie into some of the things that we're gonna speak about in terms of doing things differently and jobs and whatever we kind of like veer into and have time for today. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I think it's really important that you brought up discomfort because I feel I'm just thinking of like chopsticks.
sure.
I'm thinking of using chopsticks to eat.
She's a pro now. Everybody, you should see
Because
her.
when I did first meet you, I
Yeah.
had never really used chopsticks before.
Yeah,
And
you almost lost your mind when I picked up a broccoli or whatever. I can't remember what I
I
served.
was so impressed.
Yeah. You're so
But I'm just
good.
thinking about like I'm thinking about like my like 18-year-old self maybe like
Mm,
at a hibachi restaurant sometime in the past
yeah.
and like not being able to do it, feeling self-conscious, feeling like observed by everybody, not
Mm,
having the space to like try something new and be bad at it,
yeah.
feeling that discomfort of like not being able to quite get it.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking about this as because one of the other things that we heard when we sank in order to film this podcast
Hmm.
is that discomfort or instability could be viewed as always growth.
Yeah.
It's always growth.
Yeah.
And so I think oftentimes we assign like good or bad.
Hmm.
Discomfort is bad
Yeah.
or instability is bad.
Yeah.
But if we look at it always as growth, then I think it changes things because, even like my chopstick journey,
Yeah.
it's so small compared to like all of the other
Yeah,
things.
but I do think that it's a great narrative, you know? I think it's a great like metaphor for all of it.
Yeah, because you have to like be, I think even you sometimes were frustrated when you were like Jack, just get the fork out. Like these pieces are really small now. And I was like, nope, I'm getting even the small pieces. I'm practicing.
Yeah, I don't think that I felt frustrated, but I was impressed because I was long done with the chopsticks and I had a spoon. I
Yeah.
was just hungry.
Yeah.
I mean, I could use chopsticks, but I still like to finish my
Yeah,
bowl
but
with
I
a
was like,
spoon.
no,
Yeah.
I'm gonna get all of the pieces with the
Hmm.
chopsticks. And so even in the chopstick story, like sometimes now, even though I'm proficient with using chopsticks to eat like stir fries, like
Yeah.
recently we had a salad. I was like, I'm gonna use chopsticks to eat this romaine
Yeah, it's
salad.
a whole other experience. It's so slippery.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
because it feels like a way to be outside of something that's already known.
Yeah.
And so I think when we frame innovation in this way, the thing that I really know is that we are each bringing something that's unique.
Hmm.
And so I think we get trapped in this, we get trapped in this environment of like, this is how you start a business.
Hmm.
This is how you sing. This is how you paint. This is how you work. This is how you play. This is
Yeah.
how you hold relationships.
Yep.
This is how you hold reverence.
Hmm.
This is how you pray. This is how you hold a women's circle. This is
Yeah.
how you do energy healing. And so I think like the part of me, Gemini season, the energy that we're in right now, it's saying there's a way to do this differently. That's exactly yours. And
Hmm.
it's the thing that you're supposed to be doing.
Yes.
So create the space, try it this way, do it this way.
Yeah.
Find the courage, have the trust.
Yes.
And I think that this is the next part of the conversation because you and I were talking yesterday about how hard it is sometimes to step out of, and this is also Saturn, the structures,
Yeah.
the structures that we know create the reality around us. And we were talking about stepping outside of it.
Hmm.
And you had said, well, it takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
And I had said, well, it takes a lot of
Takes
trust.
both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I think if we can, yeah, if we can start to look at this story as just creating those opportunities to open the field
Hmm.
where all things are possible,
Hmm.
where creativity springs from the ground like streams, there's a space in that opening.
Yeah.
No matter how big or small the opening is, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Every time you open it, that's when we have this opportunity to experience life in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that discomfort is a huge part of it and becoming okay with that and becoming okay with um not being perfect.
Mm.
And I think it's difficult, honestly, because like you're speaking into there's this is the way you pray, this is the way you do that. And I think that that all stems from just like from the beginning.
Mm.
You know, when people are like, "Oh no, this is the way you do it," and you can look at different families and they hold forks differently.
Yeah.
Do you know? Because like somebody said, this is the way you hold a fork. This is the proper way. This is the way that
Mm.
girls act. This is the way that boys act. This is the way that you do this type of problem solving. Even in math, there might be different ways that you can solve a
Approach the
problem.
problem.
Yeah, and now they're kind of starting to teach different ways to approach a problem.
Mm.
But I know that when we went to school, it was like, this is the formula. And that's really helpful if you want to get a good grade in math, because you can just do it that way every time.
Mm.
But I think that there's like this subtext that comes with it that says there's a way to do things. And if you don't do it that way, it's going to be wrong.
Mm.
And I think that there's this subtext, whether we realize it or not, that's kind of like stuck in us from an
Mm-hmm.
early age,
Mm-hmm.
that there's a way to do it. And whether or not you had a music teacher that made you feel like you couldn't sing, you
Miss
know?
Maynor.
You know, and like how are you going to get better?
Mm.
You know? And we have a friend who has like picked up a guitar recently, and
Mm.
she felt like it was a big setback from where she was at because it had been quite a lot of time. And you can choose to still pick it up, or you can choose to just be like, I can't, it's too hard, it's too
Mm.
difficult, it's too uncomfortable, my fingers hurt. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like there's gonna be discomfort in it, you're gonna make mistakes,
Yeah, but I'm even
you know?
thinking now, like, how revolutionary it was the first time I heard Ani DeFranco play the guitar.
Yeah.
You know, because she just like pulls the strings and like slaps the guitar. And like in the
Is
90s,
that the right way to do it?
yeah, but this is the
Yeah.
thing, like in the 90s, that was like, no, you know, nobody was really playing guitar that way.
Yeah.
But it's Ani DeFranco's gift to the world, you know?
Yes.
And so this is exactly the right example
Yes.
because I feel like even when we pick up the guitar, there's already an
Yeah,
idea.
there's a book here. This is how you do it.
Yeah, there's already an idea of how you play the guitar.
Yeah.
And so, and even if we're not ready to reinvent the way to play
Yeah.
the guitar
Yeah.
or reinvent the way to sing or, you
Hmm.
know, because there is something that we carry that's ours to invent. I
Yes.
know it. Each of us is
Oh,
carrying this blueprint.
sure.
And as we walk through these experiences of creating these openings, that's when the blueprint that we came with
Hmm.
has an opportunity to create.
Yes.
And so maybe your thing is not guitar. Um, you know, maybe it's
Yeah.
whatever it is, but these are the and as you get more comfortable doing it,
Yeah.
right? Because you don't just sit down and say, okay, I'm going to do things differently. Boom, your soul medicine comes in. You know,
No.
this is your
It's practice like
yeah,
everything
like
else.
everything else. And so I think
Hmm.
like the more comfortable you can get with like, you know, using chopstick instead of a fork, slapping the guitar instead of strumming it, you know, like
Yeah.
in each of these situations there's an opening.
Yeah. And maybe there's like this opportunity to, and maybe it's helpful if you can sit and even if it's just for a few minutes a day,
Mm,
like bring yourself into like childlike wonder.
mm,
Whether you're like sitting outside and laying in the grass and watching the ants or whatever, you know, because I keep thinking of all these examples of kids.
mm.
And I think it's because we're talking about guitar and Ani DeFranco like slapping a guitar, but I'm thinking of August Rush, the
Yeah.
movie August Rush, where he's not played a guitar before and he sees one and he just like hits all the strings and it goes like woo, 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 and he's like, oh, I like this.
Yeah.
You know, as an adult, we I don't know if we trap ourselves or I just think feel like we become more confined because like we've gone through a longer period of time living where people keep like putting confinements on us
Mm.
and building the walls of the box that we're like quote unquote supposed to be in to
Mm-hmm.
be successful, to be however people think that we should be.
Mm.
And you can like break those, and some people are very good at the second one is on, just taking it and throwing it off. And
Aquarius people.
sure,
So good at this.
sure. But like, I think for the average person, like, you know, you hit 40, it's vastly different than when you're 4 years old and there's been maybe like however many things placed on you, right?
Yeah.
And
But still, actually, it's profound to think about how many things have already been
oh,
placed
it's
in us by the time
yeah,
you
it's
get 40. Yeah,
absolutely
but not to interrupt
wild.
your train.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely wild. But to be able to like start breaking those down and picking things off just moment by moment, and
Mm.
maybe if you can just take a moment where you, you know, draw a picture and maybe like imagine that you've never seen a crayon before, and you like
Mm.
look at the crayon and you like feel it and you feel like the stickiness of it and you press hard and you press
You
soft
have
and
to
like
try
just
to eat it.
completely, yeah,
Yeah.
completely. Like you see like a little kid trying to eat for the first time and they're looking at the food and they're like smelling it and tasting it and they don't know where their mouth is.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't have to spread like mashed potatoes all over your face, but to just have like that curiosity, even if it's just for a moment,
Yeah.
even if it's just for a moment, like watch a butterfly. I don't know the answer, but like,
Yeah, because I was thinking before we started filming about even a simple thing like the way that I make tea now,
mm-hmm,
which is not to put the bag in the cup with hot water, right?
mm-hmm,
It's like, well, what do these three bags together taste like?
yeah,
Or what is some of this loose leaf with some of this um, apple slice
yeah,
taste like?
yeah.
And so even something simple
It's
like,
this curiosity, right?
yeah, it is a
I wonder.
curiosity, right? I wonder. And not to say that cheap lens is part of my blueprint.
No, but I do think that it gets you there because I think that the more that you practice this wonderment, like I wonder what would happen, I wonder what would happen, I wonder what happened, something might come in, you'd be like, oh, I wonder what would happen because it's just like now how you function?
Yeah, it's the approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I feel like Gemini season is super supportive of this
Hmm.
because this is where we're really having this heightened mental activity around like, well, what would it be like if?
Yeah.
Or yeah, and I think that the more time that we open ourselves up to experiencing it differently, there's more and more opportunities for that soul blueprint to create in real time.
Yeah. And just have no expectations
Mm.
because you may say like, oh, I wonder what would happen if I put these two teas together and then you drink it and you're like, whoa, like not good,
Yeah.
or like I hate this or whatever. Like I wonder what would happen if I played these two notes. You're like, oh, that sounds gross. Maybe
Yeah.
it sounds good?
Yeah, but even in this grossness, this tea is gross. Like,
Oh, it's
okay, so
gross.
so
Yeah,
what
and
do
you
we need
learn.
to, yeah, so what do we need to put in?
Sure,
And
but
this is all still that growth mindset.
yeah, but I think it's having like no expectations. Or maybe
Mm.
you're like, I don't like mixing teas or I don't like doing this, but at least you gave it a shot, and you can see what it feels like in your body.
Yeah, or if you hold the only expectation as growth,
Yeah.
whether it's comfortable or
Yeah.
uncomfortable, or it tastes good or it tastes shit,
Yeah.
the only expectation is growth. But I do think that there is this element of being in the flow.
Yeah.
And we've talked before about how sometimes intuition feels like breadcrumbs or
Mm-hmm.
whispers or parts of the story. It's the first word of the sentence, it's
Yeah.
this is the way that the mystery speaks.
Yeah.
But sometimes we know that we're in flow and we're asking the questions as they come through. And
Mm-hmm.
so because I was already sitting, I'm going to go back to that example of starting to sing in light language.
Mm-hmm.
I was already in this energetic flow of translating the energetic centers in different ways.
Yeah.
I was already feeling into them experientially. I was already writing what does it feel like there. I was already pulling my awareness into, so naturally, what does it sound like there
Mm-hmm.
was part of that flow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think sometimes when we pick things that are like, okay, well, I'm going to hack my morning routine,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm going to start meditating every day for 25 minutes from 6:30 to 6:55.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said for discipline and focused discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also something to be said for flowing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this is where we can start to like look at where we're naturally being called, where our
Yeah.
curiosity naturally wants to go. Because like not everybody's really interested in what tea bags taste like together. Not everybody's really interested in like
Yeah.
what it sounds like when you hit the guitar with your knee instead of,
Yeah.
but there are things that we're already working on in
Yeah.
our lives. There's already parts of that soul blueprint that have expressed in the world
Mm-hmm.
around us, and we can start to say like, oh, okay, I'm naturally drawn towards this,
Yeah.
and like you said, presence, coming into that feeling where the energy wants to go.
Yeah. Yeah, and practice, it's just practicing being in that state, I think, even
Mm,
if it's with something monotonous like brushing your teeth with the other hand or washing the dishes, even with, your non-dominant hand.
yeah.
It's just a practice of being in the present state. And I
Mm,
think, like anything else, like the more that you do something, the more naturally it comes
mm.
to other things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we all are starting to have these seedlings. Maybe some of us have been in, we've been in this experiential difference, this other way of experiencing for quite some
Hmm.
time, but maybe someone's just starting to experience this. Oh, this is different. And maybe it's around, it doesn't matter what it's around. It doesn't have to be a spiritual thing. Like, maybe the way that they do ceramics,
Yeah.
okay, this is a different way. Even working with
Yeah.
clay is something we know, oh, this is how you center, this is how you pull the walls, this is how
Yeah.
you collar, like there's a way to work with clay that's uniquely yours if you're working with
Yeah.
clay. And so as we start to bring this remembering, how do we serve? How do we serve? It's going to look different for everybody, and our commitment to opening that space, opening that field,
Hmm.
creating opportunities for creativity to come through. This is the way that we start to anchor in that blueprint. Each of us are
Hmm.
anchoring in our own blueprints.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking now when you're speaking into like how do we serve and it being like uniquely yours,
Mm,
um, this idea that when you measure frequency, there is a frequency that is greater than love, and that is authenticity.
mm,
And and I feel like if you're trying to like take somebody else's blueprint and apply it to yourself, like, oh, this person is doing X, I'm gonna do X
yeah.
exactly like they do. I'm gonna have the
I'm a
same
sound
routine.
healer.
I'm gonna serve in the same way.
Mm,
Or I learned from this teacher. And but all you can do as a teacher, I feel like, is like present, the concepts that you know. And I
mm,
think some of the best things you can do is just to like encourage people to like still have like their own flavor in whatever you're teaching. And to encourage this idea that there's not like one right and one wrong. And you can help people along the way, like this
for
might help
sure.
you and this might help you, or do you want to try this? You can encourage them. But like if I tried to serve in the exact same way that you are meant to serve,
Mm,
would I help people? Probably.
mm,
Is it the most powerful way to help people? No.
mm-mm.
No, because I'm not in the highest frequency. I'm not in authenticity and then in love, like those two frequencies together.
Yeah,
So
it
you can
is.
carry love, but not authenticity, and it's gonna be like still good, but I do feel like if you're sitting in your own authenticity and serving in the way that you are meant to serve, that unique flavor that is only yours. And even if you and I use the same technique to pull clay,
Mm,
it would be completely different because our hands are not the same.
mm.
If it was the same pressure, if it was the same everything, our
Yeah.
hands are not the same. One's bigger, one's smaller, like it's just,
Yeah. And so important to speak into that each of us, we have so many opportunities to encourage those around us
hmm.
in this way all of the time. So,
Yeah.
not just teachers and not just parents and not just who we are in relationship, who we are as friends,
Hmm.
not just who we are as music teachers,
Yeah.
or pottery instructors, right? Like it is a mindset shift into starting to hold the true belief that somebody's own unique creation and expression is is truth, is
Yes.
love, as opposed to measuring it against how well they're able to demonstrate the way that we've told them.
Yeah.
And it's a mindset shift, and we can probably have a whole different conversation on that.
Sure.
But we can start bringing that to each other now.
Yeah, and I think like that loops right back into discomfort. It loops right back into fear. We didn't talk a lot about fear, but you know what I mean? The discomfort that comes with that when you see somebody like really stepping into that, because it's the frequency is huge.
Mm,
Somebody stepping into like unconditional love, pure authenticity.
mm,
That's a very high frequency. That's powerful.
mm-hmm.
And depending on where you are at, you might feel discomfort in that,
Sure.
You
I
might feel discomfort in yourself if you feel like you're trying like stepping into that, but I just
Mhm.
think that it's really important to recognize it like everything else. This is growth. Can be growth for me, and this person is growing growth. This person is growing. We're leaving it in. This person is growing.
Yeah.
And the gifts that they're going to bring to the world is going to benefit everybody. It's also going to benefit me. So why would I stamp on that growth? You
Yeah.
know?
And this is where that that layer trust comes.
Yeah.
Because when we truly trust that we are co-creating,
Mm-hmm.
when we are following that inner blueprint that each of us did come with, the
Yeah.
seed that's already inside,
Yeah.
when we trust that we are following this and we're helping others follow it as well as a way of divine presence, as a way of
Mm-hmm.
unconditional love, nurturing everybody's individual seeds. Like this is where the magic happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a very long way to articulate this point of Gemini season, innovation,
Yeah.
doing things a bit differently, but not in a way that's better or worse, but in a way that is yours.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and coming into that commitment that you are a role model, whether you think you are or not, in each of our
Yeah.
interactions, every time we bring ourselves into the world, whether it's with our kids or
Yeah.
with our partners
Yeah.
and our friends, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's on the internet.
Yeah, and we've spoken about this before. Like the more that you can be yourself, the more you are influencing. It's catching. I think it was in the last episode, or authenticity is catching. There's the
Yeah.
short you can find, but
But there's also this
yeah,
responsibility to hold this,
sure.
view as a teacher, as a mentor, as
Mm-hmm.
a way shower. If you're already remembering, it is our job to help others remember.
Mm-hmm.
And it's through those openings to let their blueprints really shine through. And it's
Mm-hmm.
something that we can do that is our job to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think like just keep holding yourself also.
Mm.
You know, if you're in that position where you're helping somebody and you're seeing them grow, and you know I think that there's maybe a tendency where you're like, "Ah, I want to do it, like maybe that you get sucked into it, but hold yourself and know where you are
Mm.
and keep growing authentically for yourself and remind yourself that there is space because I think that also like there's lack that creeps in.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, if this person gets too good at this offering, then I'm not going to be able to offer my services in the same area anymore
Yeah.
because the
Scarcity.
scarcity mindset is massive,
Yeah. It's a whole different
but
conversation.
everybody is still offering something that is truly unique to them. I'm going to be able to help one person, and somebody else is going to be able to help somebody else because everybody is meant to interact with people in different ways.
Yeah. It is the
Yeah.
web.
Yeah. The web. Yeah.
Yeah, so hoping this conversation serves somebody. I don't know where everyone's at in Gemini season, but it does feel like there's a lot of mental activity
Mm-hmm.
combined with Saturn moving into Aries, which is like, all right, let's do it. Let's do it now. Let's go. And so I think when those two things come together, we can start to feel like maybe a bit stuck, even like that we're not
Yeah.
going fast enough. And if we start to think like, okay, I'm going in a small way every single day,
Yeah.
this helps sort of move the ball forward.
Yeah, I think don't get caught up in that hustle culture and this like produce, 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 produce. And again, it came up in one of the cards that we pulled. I can't remember if it was mine or yours, the idea of the seed
Mm-hmm.
and how when you plant the seed, it doesn't seem like a whole lot is happening
Mm.
because you're not seeing a sprout, but stuff is happening every day. So
Oh, yeah,
if you're
every day.
feeling like you're just stuck in the ground, there's still a lot happening. You don't always have to know, you don't always have to feel it, you don't always have to have the answer. Again, comes back to trust, but just remember that if you keep going, all everything is going to keep growing and
Yeah,
that
and
sprout will come.
creating those opportunities
Yeah,
to be
that sprout
led.
will come. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we'll be back next week with
Yeah.
some more.
Surprises.
I was gonna say wisdom, but yeah, more surprises and
Yeah.
wisdom.
Thanks for joining, everybody. We appreciate you so much. We hope it serves. See you next week.
Yeah, see you next week.